Hi everyone, this is Igual. I want to make this video on exercises to avoid doing at the gym. I didn't want the title to be super long, so it's not really just exercises to avoid, but it's kind of exercises to avoid, but it's also exercises that have a more likelihood or potential of injuring you because of the motion that you do. And it's also about not doing certain exercises the wrong way, which people often do them the wrong way, and avoiding injury. On this particular video, I have my child working the camera for me, which she is located right here. Hello, everybody. Okay, back to you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with squats. A lot of people that when they don't know proper form on squats, they'll do this thing where when they go down, they instead of just bending their legs to almost parallel and keeping your legs looking straight or your eyes looking straight ahead, instead of doing it proper and looking straight ahead and going to about parallel and back up, they do this thing where they bend their legs just a little bit, and then their whole back leans forward. And they lean forward a whole bunch on the way down, and then they come up. If you see from the side, they kind of do it more like this. And what you're doing is you're asking to destroy your lower back. It's horrible form, so don't let your body lean forward when you're doing squats. Best thing I always tell myself is look straight ahead at something like on the wall, or look at yourself in the mirror and stay looking straight at it as you go down and back up. You'll be less likely to hurt your back. And usually, typically, anytime I do squats, I just go ahead and do a weightlifting belt and crank it on solid, because that one in general puts more force on your back than just about anything. Another thing is deadlifts. These two exercises are not exercises you should avoid, but be careful not to do them wrong. A lot of people, when they do deadlifts, they will, when they come down, instead of keeping that natural arch to their back and keeping that natural arch and looking up and bringing it up like you're supposed to, they will curve their back in an upward bow, and they'll do something like this. They'll do real sloppy and they'll bow it upwards, and that will destroy your back too. So don't let your back bow upwards when you're doing deadlifts. Make sure you kind of keep that natural arch to it as you come up. Another one I want to cover, and a lot of people do them, is behind the neck shoulder presses. Whenever you do, make sure, hey, look at the phone so it's on me. Whenever you do behind the neck shoulder presses, you're taking your arm and you're pulling it way, way back in an angle that's not natural for it, and you're putting a lot of stress on that shoulder. So when people do behind the back, they're forcing the arm to the limit of how far back it's able to go, and you're asking to injure your shoulders. So this is one that I pretty much never recommend that you do at all, is a behind your head shoulder press. A better alternative would be, you don't want the bench completely straight upright, because if you do, you can't get a full range of motion because you're coming down to where your head is and you're trying to get your head out of the way. So what I'll do is I'll take the bench and I'll put it back to about a 60-degree angle. It's like the first setting on most benches where it's barely angled. When it's barely angled back to a 60, your head's out of the way, and then you can focus on going straight up and straight down with good form. That's a much better alternative than behind the neck shoulder presses. Another thing to be careful on, and a lot of people do them and they can be beneficial, but if you're not experienced and you haven't built up your muscles and joints very solid, and if you go too heavy, and if you're not careful how you do them, you can injure your elbow a lot. I've hurt my elbow doing these too, is what they call skull crushers, and that's where you take a weight for your triceps, and you bring it down, and you put a major bend on your arms, and you bring it all the way down toward your forehead, and your arms bent a lot, and then you go up. Well, that's putting a ton of stress on your elbow. And I'm not saying you should automatically avoid them, but be aware that you could stress and hurt your elbow doing those. People who are really muscular and really experienced, they can successfully do those, like I said, without hurting their elbows, because they've built up all the tendons and muscle and bone in there. But if you are doing a workout and then the very next day you realize that you have pain in your elbows, you might want to look into the fact, have you done skull crushers? And the thing you notice about skull crushers, like I said, your elbows bend really drastically, really exaggerated. A better alternative to doing those would be anything where you're standing upward, because on most tricep exercises where you're standing, you're not exaggerating how far you bring your elbows. You're not coming way up to your face like on skull crushers. So what you're doing is you're coming a little bit past parallel, and then you're extending it straight. You're coming a little bit past parallel and extending it straight. That type of tricep exercise is less likely to, whoa, check out that tricep. Oh, I had to fill that in. It's less likely to injure you. I'm trying to think if there was any others that I want to. Oh, another one that can potentially hurt you. It's not automatically bad, but it's another one to be aware of. Is when you're doing dumbbell chest flies. You're coming down. The weight is so far away from your body that the hinge point is way up here, which is your shoulder. And once again, you're putting a lot of stress on your shoulder. So if you're kind of a beginner at the gym and you go too heavy, you go near the extreme of your lifting limit, whenever you're doing those dumbbell chest flies, and especially if your arms are just slightly bent, what you're doing is, like I said, the weight is so far away from your body that the amount of that weight multiplied by the time you get to your shoulder is like 6 times the amount that the weight really is, and you're running the risk of injuring your shoulder. So another thing is bend the arms slightly more, and don't come way out to your side, but kind of keep it a little bit closer to your body when you do them. Or don't go up to such a heavy weight, like where you're only able to barely crank out 6 or 8 reps. If you do chest flies, maybe make it your first set for chest, like a warm-up, where it's so light you can like easily crank out 20 reps. That's another thing. I'm trying to think if there's any others. Those are some basic exercises that either should avoid altogether or be careful when doing them, and just be aware that you have the potential to injure your joints. Those are the only ones I can think of with right now, so just keep that in mind when you're new to the gym. And this is Eagle Owl. Thanks for watching.